Growing up, I'd spent much of my life playing outside with my friends. This is in the days before you had video games and things like that, so it was pretty normal to make your own fun. All I'd have to do is take my bike, and after riding for about an hour or so, I'd be with my friends. I know that sounds like a long time, but I lived out in the backwoods, miles away from cars, so it wasn't really dangerous and it didn't feel so long because you're out in the woods. Now, later in my career, I become a park ranger, so I kind of got used to weird people and weird situations, but this is something that I couldn't explain from my childhood. Now, this actually comes from a number of things that happened to me, which all led to one specific event. So let me begin. So, I was playing out with my friends on one particular day, and one of my friends swears that he's seen a house out in the woods, deep in the middle of nowhere, but he knows exactly where it is. And he says, "God, there's a woman that haunts it and it's so scary. I really need you guys to see it." Now, we knew he wasn't making it up because when his brother came back from vacation, he was also saying the same thing. So one day we set out to find this. We had our bikes with us originally, but had to quickly dismount them. We decided to leave them because we knew it was going to be too difficult to proceed. There were rocks and things everywhere, so it was going to be really a headache to travel with them, so we decided not to. Now, we do notice some people further up also on bikes, and one, we have no idea how that they could have been on bikes out here because of how rough the terrain is. And two, we've seldom seen people here, so we thought it was a pretty bizarre thing, but we don't think too much of it and continue on. Now, funnily, this friend almost immediately gets lost and can't figure out where it is. He's basically adamant to not give up on trying to find it, but he doesn't really have a clue of where he's going. The nature's very nice though, but we're on quite a narrow path which is quite sheer. If you fell, you wouldn't really break anything, but you definitely get hurt. I've actually had the honour of falling in once and it wasn't fun. I ended up getting quite a lot of cuts and things and messed up some of my clothes, which was quite annoying. Now, after not too long, my friend finally gives up and says we're not going to find this place. I say yeah, that's fine, and we decide to start heading back. Now, I kid you not, just as we've started to turn around, we hear a really deep banshee type scream, one that echoes off the surrounding hills. It was far too loud to be a person. At the very least it would have been a large animal, but upon listening to the scream over the 2 seconds it lasted, you could hear some distinct words being spoken, and that was to get out. It's very hard to really figure out exactly what this voice was saying because I had so much adrenaline that I just couldn't focus on what I was hearing. But I look at my friends, and my friend who then led us out there confirmed that yes, he actually heard the same thing. Now we're panicking. As you can imagine, being young kids, we basically scream too and sprint out in the opposite direction. The best part about this is that we don't really know where we're going, and we ended up getting more lost in the woods. Now, I ended up getting really bad because it starts to get dark, and one, I don't want to lose my bike. My parents have only just got me it, and growing up I really didn't have much money. So if I lost a bike it was going to be a big thing, but yeah, I really couldn't find it, and that was quite worrying. And two, I didn't want to be out here in the dark with the demon. And my parents were going to kill me if I wasn't back in time. Filled with more rage now, I start strutting around trying my very best to find where the bikes could be, and thankfully we found them. Now we all split off in our different directions, and none of us really say anything. We're just rushing to try and get back home. I've never pedalled so hard in my life because I was absolutely convinced that the demon thing was going to chase after me. I know now it could have just been a person out there, or maybe a large animal. That was probably the biggest threat, but I guess back then you really don't think like that. So I was pretty concerned by this, and I well and truly didn't feel comfortable. I just knew that I had to find my way home safely. So I get in and I get banned from being on my bike for a while, which was really annoying. I didn't really explain what had happened to my parents. I knew I was going to be grounded, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be a lot worse for me if I say what's actually happened. I know looking back on it now, I should have probably explained, because it could have been a really dangerous situation. Who knows what was out there that day? Well, I'll tell you who doesn't know, me. So now fast forward a couple of months. My friend is still going on about us trying to find this place, and I kind of didn't want to this time. Normally I'm one of the real adventurers in the group, but I just couldn't be bothered. I didn't want to lose my bike luxuries again because I've just lost them, but he persists, and I guess we had nothing better to do, so I say sure. Now, I remember the day that we're going to set off again. He said that he knows the exact place this is. You know why? He said he had a dream about it. Being young, I really bought into this and thought, you know what, this time we're actually going to find it. So, we're riding down the path this time. We're actually on the more concrete area which leads into the main part of the forest, and we were going really quick. Next thing I know, I'm hitting the ground hard. My hands are stinging and something was off. I realised that I've crashed on my bike. I'd stupidly tried to go off onto what appeared to be a more flat part of the path, but I've gone straight over a big stone and ended up getting some cuts on myself. I didn't worry too much about it though. I was sat down for a while, and I tell my friends that they should just go on without me and that I need to get back home. I was young, but I was still quite concerned by this and ruining my clothes. I didn't want to get blood all over them. I know I have to get back to my mum. Now my friends, being the great friends they are, say sure and head off without me and leave me there. I look at the bike and it seems a little bit stuffed at first. I can't get the wheels to turn, so I ended up just laying there for a while. Now that's when I noticed someone. There's an elderly woman approaching. She's coming from just beyond the tree line up to my right. I look ahead and see if my friends are there to confirm if they're seeing this too, but they aren't. They're long gone. I'm a little bit worried now and very hastily get up and start trying to make my bike move. I'm trying to get the wheels to work, but I just can't seem to do it. For some reason I had a feeling that she was coming to help me, but she gets a little bit closer and just stops, smiling at me. Now she has some of the most jagged and rotten teeth that I've ever seen before. It's like this person had never seen a toothbrush in their life. Weirdly, their clothes didn't seem too dirty, considering that she's just come from the forest and surely they should have some markings on them. She's wearing a kind of dark coloured dress, but it looks pretty immaculate. If I had to guess her age, I'd say she's probably about 70 or 75. I'm not too sure. I wave at her and don't get anything back. I then say hello, and suddenly her expression changes, looking completely blank, almost like it's looking through me. Now that was creepy. I can't really make out much about her eyes because she has pretty bloodshot eyes, so I quickly get my bike, pick it up, and thankfully the wheels start moving while I'm walking. I look over my shoulder and I can still see her there watching me. For some reason I wasn't overwhelmed with fear by this, as I know a lot of people might be. This is kind of uncharacteristic for me too, because often I am the scaredy cat, but not in this situation. I start pedaling slowly at first, but I then see that she's still there staring at me, and as you can imagine I picked up the pace pretty promptly. Now I ended up getting back home, and my mum's very concerned about me. Annoyingly, she put this stinging stuff all over my cuts. I mean, it's probably antiseptic whatever, but my god did it burn like I've never felt a burn before. Honestly, it almost sent my whole body into shock how strong this stuff is. It was so much so that I'd actually forgot about what had happened until my mum asked again. I say I crashed over the stone, and then the lady come. My mum says, "What lady?" and asks me to describe her. And I explain everything that happened, and she looks at me kind of weird. She knows that there's no cars around there for miles. It's just the paths. You might get the odd truck, but it was very uncommon. She tells me that if ever I see that lady again, to come straight back and don't try and talk to her. I say, "But Mum, I couldn't even talk to her." I get the reply of, "I don't want to hear it." I'm then grounded and lose my bike privileges again. So it's starting to get quite irritating now. So not only are my friends out having this great adventure, I've crashed my bike on flat ground, hurt myself and got grounded again. I was pretty worried now because usually my mum does the 3 strikes and you're out kind of way of things. I lose a bike again, I don't know if I'll see it again. So I'm pretty upset. Now eventually my mum does release me from her prison and I'm allowed to go out. And I catch up with my friends and ask them what happened. They then say that they still couldn't find it and I started laughing. They then ask why I'm not allowed on my bike and I explain and my friend says, "That's her. That's the lady who lives there." I say, "What do you mean?" He says, "The lady that haunts the house, you saw her." And I'm not buying any of it. I say, "The day I believe you is the day I see the house." And what happens? Nothing for the next 2 months. Until eventually I get my bike back and it's time to go out once more. In the time without my bike, I'm actually super bored because I'm basically stuck indoors all day and I'm just watching the days go past. I did get some video games then, so I just killed hours on it, but it couldn't compete with being with my friends. Now, we decide that we're going to set out one last time to try and find this house. Again, I really don't believe it's there. I don't believe any of it's true, but my friend constantly goes on about it. So now, we get on that path once again, and this time I'm constantly scanning the ground. I'm very scared to go over another rock again and get hurt. It's not actually the feeling of crashing that actually bothers me, it's more the fact that I don't want to have a crash and get that stinging stuff on me. The thing was, at this point, even if we did find anything, I was sure to just lie about it. Because I think, what's the point of telling my mom about what's happened if I'm only going to get grounded again? So I swear that no matter what happens, I'm not going to tell her anything. Now we were riding for miles and miles, and eventually my friend said, "Stop." And we all stop. He says, "Leave our bikes here." We take them off to the side and actually throw them into the bushes so people can't find them. They're pretty well concealed now, which is something we're all happy about. Now we get up and we start going through the woods on this little path. My friend is absolutely convinced and certain that this is the way that we need to go to be able to get away from everyone and finally find where this house is. He says, "This is it. This is what I found before." None of us really believed him, but I guess being gullible, part of us wanted it to be real. Now we walked for miles and miles, and we still don't seem to be getting any closer to anything. I tell him, "Really, is this actually a thing or is it just a figure of your imagination?" He then says, "Be quiet." And I don't, I just keep on going until eventually, there it is. In a break in the trees, you can see an old white house. It kind of looked like an old English cottage, but slightly bigger. It certainly looked old and very abandoned. It was 2 stories tall, and looked like nobody had been there for as long as I had been alive, at least 5 times over. Now at this point I get a little freaked out, but my friend is persistent that we have to press forward to find it. We have to go in there. We have to know that it's real. I agreed, kind of getting more and more excited at this time. As we start to step towards it, a crow must have broke out of a tree nearby and it really made us jump. All of my friends are laughing at me for being so scared, but I don't know, I felt extremely on edge in this situation and it's kind of like something I haven't felt before for a long time. Even working now as a ranger, I still haven't had that feeling. I think I was too on edge. I was too ready for something to happen. Now we go a little bit further ahead, and then I can see some kind of movement. It almost looks like there's a cat or something in one of the top windows moving round. It's all black, I can't see eyes, but I knew something was in there. I think maybe it's an animal. And we continue going forward. I don't know, I'm getting a really bad feeling about this, one of my friends says. But again, we say that we've come this far and that we need to figure out what this is. And so we press forward even more. Now eventually we get up to where the door was. And I, probably being the bravest at the time, decided to step in first. And this place smelled really weird. It was kind of like an old smell. One that I hadn't smelled before, and something smelled really bad in there. I didn't know what it was. I kept on and on searching for the source of the smell, but I really couldn't find anything. So that was something quite strange. I just expected either something to jump out at me constantly, or to see some kind of dead animal or thing there to make sense of the smell, but again, there's nothing. Now, I decided to go up the stairs to see what else is up there, and this place looks like it is from about the 1800s. There's no furniture or anything. There is a picture on the wall, but it's all faded off and you can't really see what it once was. I don't think it was a picture, but some kind of portrait, but it's gone now. I then see a big spider go up the wall and I really don't like that. I'm looking for the cat though and I can't find it. I think this is odd, so I continue my search. I was sure I saw something in here. Even if it wasn't a cat, I just had the urge to know exactly what it is and just figure out what was going on up here. Now, I end up going further ahead, and while my friends are down, I realise that there's an upstairs area. There are stairs that go up another level. I go up the stairs and I can see a suitcase. I don't see anything else there, and I decide that I'm going to open it up. I have to know what's in here. Even if it's bugs or something, I really want to know. As I go to open it, I hear a sound behind me. It's movement. I'm not bothered, I think that it's one of my friends, and I slowly turn around, and there I see it. A woman crouched in the corner, staring at me. I then realise this is a woman that I saw before, and she slowly smiles at me. I drop the suitcase down immediately. It startles me, but not her. One of my friends then joins me on the stairs and screams the second he sees a woman. Something about her didn't look real or human. The next thing I know, we're sprinting down those stairs. They felt impossibly long. It was almost like it had doubled in length. My other friends were also screaming now, and we all come flying out of the house, saying, "What was that? What on earth was that?" I say I don't know, and we start explaining to the others what we saw. One of my friends is constantly looking around, and he swears that he can see someone staring at us out of the window. We don't bother looking around. I mean, me and the guy who saw it, we just keep running. We were surprisingly fit, as we probably made it about 500 meters before slowing down again. We all stopped for a moment, now feeling safe that we're away from the house, saying, "What did we see?" No, none of us can agree on exactly what we saw. We keep looking around to where the house is, but weirdly we can't find it. I know that we run off and we're quite worried and disorientated, but we should be able to see the house, so it doesn't make sense why it's not there. I start to kind of lurch backwards a bit as I realise that the fear's really taken a toll on me. It's like my vision's gone a bit weird. We then start moving again. We start running as quick as we can, and we're trying desperately to locate our bikes. We eventually come back to the main path, but our bikes are nowhere to be found. Of course not, how could we possibly find it out here? How are we going to be able to differentiate it from the surroundings when everything looks the same? We didn't think of this at the time. I didn't even care about the bike. Now the thing that makes this suck is it's going to be a long journey back without the bikes, but we just can't find them. I do want to search for a bit longer, but my friends are all too scared, and we take off running again. We don't get too far as we're really tired now, and we have to start walking. What's worse is we've got about 2 hours of daylight now ahead of us. We're all discussing, running through the probabilities of what it was, and suddenly I get annoyed at the friend saying, "Why didn't you tell me that was there?" He says, "I can't know what's up there, I've never been in there before." We all look at him then, kind of annoyed, as if to say, "Well, why didn't you let us know that before?" He doesn't reply though. And eventually, we get to the part where we have to split ways. We all say goodbye to each other, and then watch my friends go off in different directions. I don't know why, I just felt the need to stop there for a second or so, just to try and figure out, or at least make sense of what had happened, but I can't really make sense of anything. I then think, God, my bike, this isn't good. I'm going to be in so much trouble. And I start to fabricate an excuse to my mum as to what's happened to my bike, so at least then maybe she won't be too annoyed at me. It was stolen, that's it. I'm going to tell her it was stolen. Eventually, after a 2-hour walk, I get home just before the sunset. My mum can see me without my bike and says, "What happened?" And "It was stolen, Mum. I think a kid's stolen it." Weirdly, she wasn't annoyed at all. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, honey. We'll get you another one." Dinner's ready. I'm really surprised, and I take my food and go and sit in my room to eat it. Now fast forward to all these years later, and even in my current line of work, I've never seen anything so strange, and I still can't really make sense of it all. I don't know what I could have possibly seen up there. I'm just glad that I wasn't the only person to have seen it, and somebody else did, because if it was just me, I probably wouldn't have believed it. I grew up in rural South Georgia, and I live with my parents and several siblings on a large farm. Most of my family grew up believing in paranormal activity due to our Native American heritage. My dad, on the other hand, was a non-believer and would always discount our encounters as hogwash or other active imaginations. My mum said that she had been woken during the night by disembodied voices. She said that it would sound like there was a room full of people where you couldn't hear a single conversation, but could tell the overall mood of the room. The activity would heighten around pivotal moments in her life. For years, my dad would laugh it off and said that he's never heard a thing, even after all the kids moved out. Fast forward several years later, and my dad had been diagnosed with large and small cell lymphoma, and lost some weight and things because of it. I stayed with him around Christmas of 2020, and I vividly remembered him telling me that he's routinely awoken by the same voices that he had discounted for decades. He said that he would check the house to make sure the TVs or radios were off, but there never was anything. Now, something happened to me a few years ago. Long story short, I was walking my dog at night when, in the forest, I saw something lit up by orange street lamps, which appears to be a deer standing up. But when I look at its head, I can't understand its face, as in, the head/face was sort of shrouded in darkness. It's almost like it's rooted away, and I can't comprehend what I'm seeing. Last night, years after that encounter, nothing strange had happened up to now. I was sleeping in my bedroom, which is situated facing the road, with my windows open. I'm normally a deep sleeper, but I woke up to the loud sound of bird noises. At first I thought nothing of it, simply birds calling in the middle of the night. But over time, I noticed something. It's hard to describe, but it sounded as if about every 5 seconds or so, there would be different bird songs and calls. The calls weren't different sounds, as in certain birds making different pitch noises or whatever. Instead, it's the same whistling noise, not like a whistle blowing, but instead, like the noise of a songbird, but in different arrangements for an hour straight. It was very loud, but loud enough that I covered my head in 2 pillows and was still awoken. It was just repeating the same 50 different calls or so in the same order. It was as if one bird was trying to imitate the different calls of different birds over and over again. The noise was about 25 feet away, coming from the thicket next to my home. There was no sound though but the calling. There was no birds or I should say other birds, frogs or anything. No cars actually went through. I also faintly remembered the smell of rotten eggs, but this may have been my brain just playing tricks on me. Eventually it stopped though and I fell back asleep terrified. I had kept my eyes shut tight. I woke up again about 15 minutes later, hearing the sound seemingly further away down the street, but at the exact same order. Then later through the night, I heard the noise again, either in the same spot as before and louder or right next to my window. I faced away from the window and kept my eyes shut, horrified but in such a tired state that I simply stayed there, not able to think of anything else. What was that? Does anyone have an explanation for it? I don't know what it could have possibly been. One of the more stranger things that happened to me while working as a ranger is when I actually had to do camping once. I was actually sent out somewhere to show some guys how to camp and just do general survival training. I didn't really have much of an issue with this. I really enjoyed sharing knowledge and teaching others, so it was a time that I looked forward to. There's supposed to be a group of guys that I was going to have to train, but in the end it turned out only one of them actually showed up. Again, no issues for me. It basically just made my job a lot easier. We had about a week of a planned camping trip that we were going to go and do. Now the area had lots of wild animals in it, but again, because of my background this didn't really bother me much. The other guy that I was taking there with me had some experience too, being in the scouts and things, so he was also used to being outside. The guy was really nice and we get on really well, and we set out in a beautiful area. The paths that we're walking on aren't very good though, to be honest. I guess you can call them paths, but they're kind of more like clearings. I didn't have an issue with this, but I am constantly checking with the other guy if he's okay, because I don't want him to get an injury here. I'm quite a big guy, but I'm not going to be able to carry this guy if he gets hurt or anything. So, completely aware of this, we decided to be very careful. Now, we got through the first day with no issues at all, and everything's going pretty well, to be honest. We both felt really good, and I actually taught this guy a lot. We got on really well, and it turns out that he actually went to school quite close to where I used to. Crazy how small the world is out here. I don't know, things like that always seem to amaze me, especially when you don't expect it. So anyway, we continue and we're doing some hunting the next day. We ended up finding a really nice white water rapid. Not really rapid, but I guess a strong stream next to us, and we decided to try and catch some fish in here. There's some that end up getting caught in little pools of rocks and things, and we ended up finding one, which was pretty cool. We decided to head back and put these on the fire that we started. We actually had some issues getting the fire started, and I told this guy that you have to bury the food after, and just some other basic things. He said sure, and everything is normal. We get on to the next day, and everything seems a little bit odd. I don't know how to describe it, but it was almost like there was something in the air, which was ever so different from what we had felt the first couple of days. I mean, the first few days felt really peaceful, and we were really happy out there, but something just felt different now. I couldn't describe it. The guy would also act a little bit more weird now. I could clearly tell that he was paranoid, but I don't know, some things just weren't making sense to me. The way that he would speak to me, I mean, he would start saying something, then would just stop. He was telling me that he had lots of aspirations to work in the forest like I did, and to really have a long career like me. And I said that was cool, but then he would say something out of the blue, like he'd say, oh, the colour red, or something weird like that. He kind of laughed it off a few times, but I didn't like it. I don't know how to describe it. It made me very on edge. I was constantly trying to keep at least a little bit of distance between us and just scope out what was wrong. I thought, yeah, maybe the guy wasn't cut out to be here. Not everybody is. Some people have real issues with this psychologically, and maybe he's just panicking through it. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. And we continue onwards like normal. Now, eventually, we fall asleep in the tent, and I'm awoken by the sound of sniffing or something. I can't figure out what it is. I go to wake up the other dude. I say, hey Ben, are you there? Ben. And I don't get a reply. I then realise that he's outside somewhere. I think that's quite odd. I can see the silhouette of somebody, and I get up to investigate and say, Ben, what are you doing? I grab my flashlight, and I can't find him anywhere. I also can't figure out who's around. I say, Ben, come back, what are you doing? And then I start to panic a little bit. It's like this guy just vanished, but the really weird thing is that I saw somebody going around our tent. I say our, but I now realise that I'm the only one in it. I think this is really odd and I start to panic. I ended up calming myself down a little bit, and then I can see a group of people. They all seem to be sitting around a fire. I think that's really odd. There's probably about 8 or so of them, and then I can see Ben next to them. I shine the torch on and say, hey, you guys, what are you doing? We're meant to be asleep, who are you? And I don't get a reply. I then turn the light off and jog over, and then only Ben's remaining. I say, Ben, what's wrong? And he says, God. And he suddenly snaps out of some kind of trance or something. Looking really confused and sleep deprived, he said, what am I doing? Why am I here? I say, what's wrong? Where are the people? He said, what people? And looks really confusedly at me. I say, you know, the people around us, and I shine my torch around trying to find them, but literally everybody's gone. Ben is absolutely adamant that nobody else has been around him. I then take his hand and say, come on, we're getting back to the tent. And we go back to the tent, and he falls asleep almost exhaustedly. I didn't get asleep one bit that night. I woke up the following day and constantly questioned him on what had happened, but he has absolutely zero recollection of it. We eventually go on for the rest of the trip, but we cannot find out who those people were, or why they led him out there, or where on earth they went to. It's something that still haunts me to this day. In northern Minnesota, at a rural lake resort that my friend owns, we were snowboarding through the woods at around 2 AM. It was about an hour from any surrounding towns to get there. The resort was closed for the winter, and we were staying at one of the lodges for a couple of nights. We got lost and went pretty deep into the woods, and I got a horrible sinking feeling and was asking him to hurry us back. I kept seeing glittering red specks of light around us. It looked like red lights or eyes staring at us. It happened every 5 to 10 seconds from different directions. There was something black in the underbush. I could hear sticks breaking around us, and this just seems to be getting closer and closer but without moving. My friend had accelerated hard and we whipped through there, multiple times turning hard and ending up finding a crossing to a thawing lake at an unsafe speed to get back to the lodge. You could hear the ice cracking beneath us, just loud chunking noises. I asked him what's going on, why did he take us across the lake like that? It's so dangerous, and I was panicked and annoyed. He said he saw faces in the woods and kept seeing something in the underbrush. He kept feeling like something was coming after us, which is why we had to take such sharp turns, as he had seen it a few times at the turning points. I have no idea what was out there that night. This was no trail cam area, and we also didn't see moose or bear tracks the next day. It still gives me a weird heavy feeling now 10 years on. I distant hike when I can. Sometimes this means getting up early, staying out late, to get as many miles in as I can. Sometimes walking in the pitch dark with a low light headlamp seems spooky. I grew up in the wooded areas. I've slept under a canopy of stars more nights than I can count. I've trekked literally thousands of miles of trails, riverbanks, lake shores, ridge bottoms, bogs and creeks. I've hunted the game. I'm establishing this because this is very important for you to understand. I've seen, heard, smelt all about this region in terms of what it has to offer with wildlife. My scariest experience so happened at about 04:30 in the morning. It was late spring, so the first morning light wouldn't be visible from the treetops for another 30 to 45 minutes. Another hour passed until sunrise. I was on mile 5. I'm in a low bottom that's wedged between the two steep ridges. The trail I'm on was narrow, muddy, and completely hemmed in by thick underbrush, young maple and oak. I'm confused, but focused on a small light with my headlamp, and I did hear what I think I did, a loud crack. I freeze solid. This is a part I'm having trouble describing. 04:30 in springtimes means I am the only thing making noise. No birds chirping, nothing. It's literally dead quiet. Mid-step I froze. Now it's just me and my fight or flight reaction. The thought instantly flashes in my mind as I stood there bracing myself into silence. If I hear that again, I'm turning round and leaving in a hurry. Why? Because that sound was not a branch breaking, nor a deadfall. It wasn't a widowmaker. I was damn sure that whatever did that done so intentionally towards me. Hearing it twice, well, God. To describe it as best I can, it sounded like a big piece of wood being violently smashed against a tree. More like a baseball bat, to be honest. The distinction in my head being that this sounded like a crack, not a thud or thump, as I have described it as an explosion. It's such a horrifying sound to me now. So I stood there, completely spooked. I realised the soon to be worst part of my situation. I knew where the sound come from. I knew where the trail went. In about 30 yards, I was gonna come to a 180-degree turn and start up the ridge going away from the creek. This meant as soon as I got the courage to move towards the noises, I was gonna have to turn back to it and get up that ridge. I'm nervous now. My head somewhere between meth find murder and Bigfoot. Minutes pass, I just breathe. With the fog misting up on my glasses, and there's nothing. Dead quiet. I've got about 30 minutes until first light. I crank up the headlight and start to slowly creep to the 180-degree turn. When you wear a headlamp in the woods at night, every branch can cast 1,000 shadows. Without moonlight, there's little help. I get to the turn and quickly make the bend. I'm moving pretty fast now, trying to be quiet, taking tiny shallow breaths. Then I smell it. A stench hits me that I can't describe. Imagine being dead, rotten and cold and wet. I've actually worked scenes with humans who have expired in the past, and this was worse or similar. I kept walking fast. By the time I made it to the top of the ridge, I'm huffing. The first light's here. I didn't stop moving until the full light was out. I've never heard it again in the woods since then, and I've never had a smell like that before. I honestly have no idea what the hell that sound was, or what could have been strong enough to make it. few years ago, when I was 17, I just graduated from high school and got my first job at a Christian camp near Yosemite in California over the summer. Mainly the people I worked with were great and really sweet Christian college kids, the good kinds. There was one guy though, I would say he's Carl. I didn't frankly like him. He was tall, handsome, charming, had golden curly brown hair and a smile that could stop your heart. His eyes though, they're dead. He never got those little crinkles in the corner of his eyes when he smiled, which suggests that it's not a real smile. It was like the top half of his face died. There were things I did not like about Carl off the bat. His eyes for one, the death of his smile. He never asked for anything. He tried to twist your arm. He just very softly, very slowly tried to manipulate the situation to feel as though you owed him. Each time, it felt like a part of my brain shut down, like a slamming door, almost like I'm powerless to say no. I get along with most of the little cliques of the camp. No one really dislikes each other. As far as I knew, we just kind of broke off into groups based off what we like into our free time, or who we like the most. Carl though, seemed to make friends one-on-one with a clique. By the time he left the group, it was desolate. They were fighting, not speaking or trusting each other. I know this isn't a lot of evidence, but I'm trying to take a good picture mentally and describe it to you. Now one day, everyone in the camp decided to go friendzone. We tried out a lot of camp food and wanted real dinner, maybe seeing a movie or go bowling. I was off work last. Now, at camp, we had a sign out sheet. Being so close to Yosemite, we often went hiking, so if we had left, we put our name down, along with where we're going, when we left and where we should be back, and when. This way, if anything happens, the search teams know where to go. So I put all my info into this sheet and head down to the parking lot. My friends had all divided up into their cars, and I jokingly asked if they forgot about me. They said Carl had said I could ride with him. I look around and I don't see Carl, although I seen his name on the sheet. All of the hair on my body stood on end. I was terrified to get in the car with this guy alone. He felt so wrong, just off, just not right. I don't know how else to say it. My friends were telling me I have nothing to worry about and everything's gonna be fine. I saw Carl walking towards the parking lot with that dead smile on his face, and everything in me was seeming to get scared. I said that I was tired and wanted to stay in tonight, and Carl laid the charm trick on me, telling me what a night it's gonna be. I owed him because of God knows what, with this dead smirk on his face. I refuse. He gets mad. Told me I don't need to be such a horrible person. Finally, everyone figured out that I wouldn't be persuaded. I hugged one of my girlfriends goodbye, whispering in my ear not to ride with Carl back. When they all left, I walked back to the area with the sign out sheets to cross off my name, since obviously I wasn't going anywhere. I saw the sheet, saw where my name was, and my heart dropped. My name had already been erased. Where I live in college, I have to come back a long way to get to home. It's literally states away, so I'm used to driving for hours on my own. This is often through heavily forested roads, with little to no other cars on the journey. Now I don't mind, I just play some podcasts and really enjoy my time normally. However, one night would change that forever for me. So it was the end of semester, and I was ready to set off like normal, and I check my phone and I have a text off my mum. It says, "Be careful." I don't know why I have a really weird feeling about tonight. I laugh about it and think, yeah, she's always paranoid like that, and set off at around 10 at night. I should be home by about 5 in the morning, that means, so I can get in, sleep and enjoy the day with my family. So I set off and all feels normal. I've got my music playing and I'm having a good time. Now I don't know why, I suddenly have this weird feeling come across me. I notice that my radio starts to act up too. Not like normal interference though that I've ever heard before. This is almost like it's being jammed. I just laugh and quickly switch my phone to podcast mode. Aliens are not gonna stop me today, I laugh to myself, and I continue onwards. Now as I'm driving, I haven't seen one other car yet, but lo and behold, there's some kind of light as I'm approaching a bend. I slow down thinking it's another car, making sure I don't have an accident, but it doesn't seem to move. I think this is odd. As I get closer, I realise that it's just a torch that's been placed on the side of the road. It's as though a person's just put it there to look like a car's headlights. I think that's really odd, but decide to keep going, thinking maybe a road worker left it there by accident. I don't know, it could happen. Now as I'm driving, I switch the radio again to get a weather update, and I realise that the same jamming type thing is in place. I really don't want to worry myself and think I'm just being paranoid, so I press on. Now that's when I see the same thing up ahead again, except there's two. What giving it away is that one was dimmer than the other, but it was the same orange type of glow that the torch had from before. I'm certain that it's just going to be some road workers doing something, so I decide to slow down and roll my window down to let them know that they've left a torch on up the road and it might be dangerous to other drivers. As I do so, I see some people in high-vis jackets. When I'm slowing down though, I have a horrible feeling that something isn't right. My car slowly comes to a stop, and I decide to put my full beams on. I know some of you are gonna moan at me for this, but I didn't care about temporarily blinding someone to see what was going on. That's when I see it. There's 5 people wearing high-vis jackets, but something looks off about this. I can see that the people in the background are wearing all black and a high-vis jacket. That just isn't right. I'm confused as to what's going on. Why on earth would they wear all black and a high-vis jacket? It's almost like they're not actual road workers, but the two at the front are. I call out and say, "Hello, are you guys from the government?" And there's no reply. As I'm waiting there, a horrifying grin comes across one of the workers' faces. As my eyes have adjusted to the darkness, I can see that there's more lights in the background. And I can see that the torches have been placed there just the same as before. Then suddenly, I can hear the sound of rustling around me. To my left, I can see that there's a group of people coming from the tree line. And, almost on cue, my headlights go back to normal mode automatically and I can't see the guys in front of me. Just as it goes off though, it gives one flash of light and I can see that the people in the trees are carrying a lead pipe and other objects. This is the most scared that I've ever been in my life, and my fight or flight kicks in. I desperately jam my car into reverse and floor it, panicking not knowing what to do. As I do so, it illuminates the silhouettes of at least 8 other people on the left side of me, waiting, coming to the tree line. As I'm reversing out of there, to my horror, they all come into the road and just stop, staring at me, all dressed in black. What's worse is that as I'm screaming, the light suddenly goes off from the torches and I can't see them any longer. I immediately do the quickest U-turn of my life and start heading in the opposite direction. I'm trying to get through to the police, but I've got no signal. I speed the rest of the way home. In a terrified state, I'm crying to my mum. I don't know if they'd followed me or what. I made damn sure to get out of there as quick as I possibly could. I then file a police report. The worst thing? My mum doesn't believe me about any of this. She thinks it was just sleep-induced hallucinations, and that I was so tired I imagined all of it. That was about to change though when the police arrived, and they told me and my mum that they were so thankful for the report, and they've been tracking down a group of people who pretended to be road workers to then try and kidnap people. Apparently someone else nearly got caught earlier in the week, but sped away too when they tried to grab her. It just makes me sick to think that there's people like that out there in the world. But the fact that I was miles into deep forest with no one around to help if I needed it then. It was only God's grace that I spotted them and didn't actually get out. About a month ago, I moved into a house near the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. It's very secluded. Everything was great up until about a week ago, when this strange thing started happening. Not like paranormal, just strange. So I knew moving in, I'm gonna have about an acre to myself, which is nice. The acre itself is just about all thick dense woods. Towards the back you can't even go any deeper because the land is too rigid and the trees block a clear path into anything. Now I live alone in this tiny home. My brother and his dog are moving in a couple of weeks. The house is pretty small. It also has a basement with a sliding door to the backyard, which has a tiny little fence that can be knocked down completely if someone's trying to get over it. I decided that I was going to start fixing it up until my brother's dog becomes well trained. Now this is when the first creepy thing happened. I left to go to Lowe's just to buy one classic lump of wood for a fence, just enough to make sure a dog can't get his head over it or leap past it. Now as I was coming back home, I noticed a man on my doorstep. Looking inside through my window, even though any person could have heard me pulling into the driveway, he doesn't flinch at all, even when I slam the door shut. Eventually at this point, I kind of uneasily said, can I help you? To which he replied, I'm just your neighbour and saying hello. I went out of my way to put the wood I was carrying in my hand down on the ground and went to shake his hand, and he didn't move again. He just stared at me. After this weird encounter, I was more just done with him, so I said that I'm very busy and I'm fixing my fence and it's nice to meet him. He stayed at the front of my house though for about another 2 minutes, watching me put all my wood inside the living room, looking into and around my house in the process. I'm thoroughly creeped out now. I just closed the door in his face and went about my business. About 2 days later, into fixing my fence, another woman, this one looking nicer and having put a little appearance into her look, greeted me kindly, telling me about herself. I'll call her Miss H. Now she started to talk to me, explaining how people don't normally move around here, and I was the first in about 11 years. She went on to explain the rest of my neighbourhood, whom I knew are around the same age as her, like to stay to themselves. After a pleasant talk with Miss H, I asked her, what's up with the guy that I saw earlier? She said that, well, he's about 6 foot, which you probably know. Old, but not too old. Probably mid-50s and brown eyes, decent shave and grey hair. Miss H went on to explain that the person who lived here before me was a widow, and her teenage daughter, who was homeschooled, had left because this perv started to stalk her. She got on to say other things about this weird man, and eventually left it at that. Now last night, I thought I heard a tapping on my window at exactly 2:37 AM. I knew this because I looked at my clock. Now my window is a good 4 feet above the actual ground, and below it, I think it's just a figure of a bird or something, and maybe it's casted its shadow trying to get in. But no less than 2 minutes after silence, the tapping become 3 loud bangs. I immediately ran to the closet, grabbed my hunting .22 and hid under my bed. Peeking over, I see a figure looking in. After being scared for my life, I hear the familiar voice of the perv shouting, "I need your help." Not knowing what to do with myself, I threw my curtain open, and the only thing between his forehead and my .22 was a ½ inch of my glass. He didn't say a word. Not "don't shoot me," not "I need help," not "oh hey." He then pointed behind him to the fence. I then ran outside to see what he wanted. I still have the gun on me. I said, "What's wrong?" He said nothing, pointing to my fence. I look over, and this time I saw the fence had seemed to have been run over by a car, with mud tracks everywhere. How on earth had I not heard this? I look at the 50-something-year-old cars, of whom were dirty tire tracks that could have left this. I'm annoyed at what I saw and yell, "What the hell?" And then pull my finger on the trigger when he finally replied, "That's your fence, isn't it?" Jumped in his car and quickly sped off. It's currently 3 PM on March 2nd, and I've scraped the entire fence idea out of sheer exhaustion and fear. This is really happening right now, and I'm really not sure what to do. What I'm about to tell you happened 2 days ago in southwest Sweden. It was around 5 PM in the afternoon, and I decided to meet up with one of my friends. We have moped scooters, and drove to the grocery store to get a snack for our small trip. After that, we head towards a beautiful sheep pasture that I had been to once and wanted to go to again. It's located maybe 15 minutes away from the center of town. After a while, we come to a narrow road surrounded by a forest, since it rarely drives any kind of vehicles out there. I started to drive in the middle of the road, and sometimes even on the part of the road for approaching cars. One time, when I looked in my mirror, I saw my friend driving close to the edge. At first, I thought she was making a point that I should keep on my part. But then, she drove even closer to the edge, almost going in a ditch. I stop and wait for her to catch up. We're both kind of laughing, and I ask her what happened, and she said, "I got distracted by something weird by a tree and forgot the turn." We laugh and continue. Later, when we sat in the sheep pasture eating our snacks, we started talking about it again for some reason. I asked what she saw, and she described it as some kind of wooden plank that was nailed to a tree, and that it looks like a figure, person with just holes as eyes. My reaction was, "Oh yeah, really?" And we decided to relocate it on the way home. We stopped by the roads and I turned off the engine. When I look up, I spotted it right away. It was hanging in a tree, looking dead. Now, I immediately think of some cults that are known to operate in the area. Maybe they were worshipping this. I don't know. I have a picture saved on my phone of this, and I'm really thinking of reporting it to the authorities. Something just doesn't feel right about it though. I have a horrible sense of evil when I look at this. I hope nothing too bad's happened here. I even got told that this could be a grave for something, as part of some of the sacrificial rituals that can take place there. I'm not really willing to go back to find out though.